Hello and welcome back to Network. My name is Cyrus and thank you for being a part of my podcast. Today we are looking at Julius Malema, a very formidable personality and the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters political party in South Africa. He will turn 43 years old in March this year. He was the youth leader or the youth league president of the ANC party. The party of Nelson Mandela. May his soul rest in perfect peace. We love him. Today, he is the president or the leader of the political party he formed after being expelled from the ANC party some 12 years ago. He was given suspensions and finally kicked out of the ANC in 2012 for some reasons such as he wanted South Africa to nationalize mining companies. He spoke on regime change in Botswana. I remember that so vividly. He was accused of sowing division in the ANC party as well. So those were some of the reasons why they kicked him out. He was 30 years old at the time. And on 26 July 2013, after 1 year of being kicked out of the party, he formed the EFF political party with his own friend, Floyd Shivambu, who was also kicked out of the ANC party. And by their name, you know they are vendor men if you know of any of the tribes in South Africa. Now, since that time, in 2013 till now, South Africa has held 2 national elections. And so far, EFF party has won 44 seats in parliament, making them the 3rd largest political party in SA today, only behind ANC and DA. And this is an extraordinary feat. But here is where I am driving at. The EFF party is a radical left-wing, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist movement. They stand for nationalization of the mines and the banks and the national grid and the expropriation of land for redistribution without compensation. They also stand for reparations. I know that's a lot of English for some of you who couldn't catch up with what I said, but it simply means his party wants the government of South Africa to take back the lands from the white South Africans without any form of compensation, and also compensate black people for the centuries of slavery work without pay. He has subsequently come out in other interviews to clarify that he wants lands that belongs to white South Africans, which are not particularly in use, to be taken from them and redistributed to the black South Africans. Now, to be a leftist party can be explained with one big word: egalitarianism, which means state control of major institutions of political and economic relevance. Leftists tend to be hostile to the interests of the traditional elites, including wealthy and members of the aristocracy. They tend to regard social welfare as the most important goals of the government. They stand for traits such as feminism, civil rights movement, the establishment of international human rights, and so on. So it's not surprising to see Julius Malema waving the LGBTQ+ flag. In addition, he also stands for open borders for all African countries to move freely without any visa restrictions, something which I, to some extent, agree with. There are quite a number of South Africans who support some of his ideas, and a lot more South Africans who don't support him at all. His approach to governance is met with a lot of mixed reactions if you live in South Africa. But somewhere in May of this year, South Africa will be having their national elections, and it's expected for Julius Malema and the EFF to contest for president for the first time. Remember, all this while Malema has been a member of the National Assembly, which is the equivalent of the member of parliament in other African countries. This contest and the possible outcomes are the reasons for today's episode. I need you to come with me, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go. So 2 things are about to happen in South Africa. Mark my words and mark it on the wall. Should Malema contest and win the elections in South Africa and become the next president with a good number of representatives in the National Assembly, one of 2 things is bound to happen in South Africa starting from this year. And this is based on my personal observation. My prediction number 1 is on the local South African front. if Julius Malema becomes president of South Africa, the people of South Africa can kiss the current societal order of the country right now a goodbye. And this is what I mean. For those who live or have lived in South Africa before, you can attest to this. Black South Africans don't actually hate white South Africans like the media would want you to think. They work with them and they work for them and can live with them in peace so long as opportunities are made possible to the ordinary South African, especially the black South African. The problem with that is this. The white South Africans at the very top, I mean the 1% white South Africans who actually own the mining companies and organizations, don't like certain things about the black people and will go to any length to maintain the current order. Tell me these aren't true. They don't like their work ethic, number one. They don't like their mannerism, and they don't like the fact that they make them feel as colonizers even till today. These are the real gatekeepers of South Africa, and they are friends with the top 1% of the black South Africans and offering them jobs with good pays to the middle income black South Africans. These people are comfortable. I'm talking about the middle income and the top 1% South Africans, and would like to keep the current system that way. So it's actually the ordinary South African who will be in the center of this roller coaster of politics, and that will have a serious impact on the South African society. And I promise you this, you will see how the National Assembly will get worse than it has been with the EFF in the minority. The people of the other political parties will do exactly the same things the EFF did to the ANC whilst they were in opposition. And if not more, this will degenerate to no productivity. I promise you this. Blacks and whites relationships will become one with more of aggravated suspicions and uncertainties. There will be no true and mutually understandable roadmap to how lands will be retaken and redistributed. I am not trying to suggest that South Africa will be like Zimbabwe, not at all. I am rather sure that Malema has seen firsthand how things went wrong with the Zimbabwean method and won't go that route. But I suspect that this approach, which is his approach of empowering the black South Africans with lands and logistics and financial aids, in especially getting involved in farming, won't yield much results or success. And this is because the South African youth of today, just like the youth of Africa, aren't as excited about farming like he would think. And I'm confident in saying this because the interests of the people you are fighting for should never be overlooked. Yes, the black people of South Africa want economic empowerment, and it's long overdue. And in fact, all of African youth, all of Africa needs economic empowerment. But if you just begin that process by throwing things to people without making them work for it, they won't value it and they won't preserve it. Many South African youth today have become familiar with grants and aids. I remember when I was there, like it was yesterday, they will get a brand new car on high purchase, and just after a year, when a newer model is out, they return the old. They don't save up money to carry cash to the car garage to buy cars. So what I saw common about them was they normally didn't care much about how to handle their cars, because the idea wasn't about driving the car for at least a decade like most people do in the rest of Africa. This is my fear for the kind of change I suspect will happen in South Africa if Malema becomes president. I fear that this change he's fighting for might be counterproductive, because as it stands now, many of the black middle income South Africans love the current system. I mean, they love it, and thousands of people in the trenches aren't necessarily hateful of the current system. They only want an opportunity to partake in the current system. Do you know the pay difference, ladies and gentlemen, in comparing South Africans and the rest of black Africans in terms of people working in the government departments? Do you know how much local and black content is required of foreign companies operating in South Africa? I can go on and on. What I'm trying to say is this. Their system is pretty decent, but I can promise you this. what will happen in South Africa when Malema is president is already what is happening in the USA today. The Democratic Party led by Joe Biden is just doing all that Malema wants to come and do for South Africans, just as Biden is doing in America, and it's a mess. The American borders are now out of control. Intolerance towards conservative ideas have become more normal. When the Democratic Party were initially preaching inclusivity, the government of America is spending more on other countries than its own citizens, and people's sense of entitlement has gone through the roof. They loot shops and vandalize people's properties, and it's just chaotic, ladies and gentlemen. I love Malema, don't get me wrong, and many of his ideas, like black empowerment and open borders and working with Russians and Chinese and leading a third force through populating the legislature. I mean, there are so many things I'm learning from him from far. But my ideas on those same issues comes with a lot of controls and moderations. So that's for my first prediction on the effects of Malema presidency on the society of South Africa. Prediction number 2. This is on the Continental stage. His victory will usher in a new wave of a leftist wing across the African continent. And this is what I mean, ladies and gentlemen. Right now in Africa, many citizens of different countries are tired and not happy with the monopoly of their political parties, which is impoverishing the people, and they want change. There is the yearning for something new all over Africa, a change of political leadership and a change of international partners. And yet the same people, the same type of many African countries are skeptical about how conditions will look like when they are no more dealing with the West. But if Malema and the EFF should win, which could happen, it is a 50-50 thing, and their case doesn't end up like the situations of Cuba and Venezuela or Zimbabwe, there is a likely going to be an avalanche of African countries going left as a result of that win. I suspect many African countries will be studying South Africa and will eventually take up their cross in ditching the West to embrace Russia and China fully if the economic situations of South Africa improves. As it stands right now, the current order with the West has proven to never going to favor Africans, and this too has to change. So I see a gate of looking east about to open to the African continent should things go well for the EFF and Julius Malema. What will be the implications of following South Africa to the east? Well, this is what I think. Democracy as defined by the West and understood so far by many African countries will take on a new meaning, ladies and gentlemen. It will become a democracy as defined by specific countries in Africa. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will be the direct blow in the face of the West, who would prefer to continue their stamp of standards and approvals on Africa. It will threaten their dominance and source of cheap raw materials, and they will meet this with all sorts of political and financial machinations as usual, all sorts of sabotages. And so South Africa risks the chance of either choosing to maintain and perhaps improve the current economic and social order of the country, or experiment with a new proposed order led by yours truly, Julius Malema. The elections are not far from now, and we wish Mzazi all the best. Kindly subscribe, like, share, leave a comment if you like my content and you want to see more of such. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and until I come your way again, God bless you, and it's bye-bye for now.